is Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. He's, of course, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee. Senator Sanders, welcome back to Meet the Press, sir.
My pleasure.
Let me start with what apparently the president said behind closed doors to the House Democrats. And he floated the idea that, hey, this number is going to be a little bit lower, 1.9 trillion to 2.2 trillion. Have you accepted the fact that it's not going to be 3.5 trillion?
Chuck, that is, by the way, that is not my understanding of what he said. What he said is there's going to have to be give and take on both sides. I'm not clear that he did bring forth a specific number. But what the president also said, and what all of us are saying, is that maybe the time is now for us to stand up to powerful special interests who are currently spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to prevent us from doing what the American people want. We want to lower substantially prescription drug costs in this country so we're not paying 10 times more for certain drugs than Canada and other countries. And the pharmaceutical industry has 1,400 lobbyists on Capitol Hill right now trying to stop us. We want to deal with the existential threat of climate change. We want to deal with child care. We want to expand Medicare so elderly people can chew their food, can have hearing aids, can have eyeglasses, and we can pay for this by demanding that the wealthiest people and largest corporations finally start paying their fair share of taxes. That's what this struggle is about. Do we do what the American people want? Do we fulfill what democracy is supposed to be about? Or do we bow down to powerful special interests?
What is your preference when you're writing this bill? Look, I know what your initial preference was. You believe 3.5 trillion is the compromise, that you started at 6 trillion. But whatever the number ends up being agreed upon, do you believe in these programs? Because there's a large wish list and a set of needs the country has, but you might not be able to do all of them fully funded. Do you believe in trying to do as many of them as you can, and maybe that some of them are smaller programs and you'll vote on them in a couple years to extend the funding? Or do you think you got to do 3 or 4 things really well?
Chuck, this is not a wish list. Climate change and cutting carbon emissions has everything to do with whether or not we leave this planet to future generations that is healthy and is habitable. Scientists tell us we got a few years. You want more workers out in the workforce. We need to reform child care so that 1 million women can come back to work and not have to pay as a family 20 or 30% of their income for child care. You have to have skilled workforce. We can't have a skilled workforce and do the good jobs that are out there unless we train young people. That's why we want to make community colleges tuition free. So this is not a wish list. This is what the working families of this country want and what the economy needs. The real question is, the Republicans, of course, are owned by the pharmaceutical industry and the fossil fuel industry. We don't expect them to do anything. But the question now is whether the Democrats can come together, and I think that we can, to finally do what working families in this country desperately want us to do.
You know, I'm curious, one of the things that we've observed here in our news division is we know we're going to be closer to a deal when we see you and Senator Manchin in the same room with the president. And I'm curious, Senator Schumer apparently had a memo that had the number that Senator Manchin was basically his beginning negotiating number. Was that news to you, or have you known this for a couple of months where Senator Manchin stood on his red lines?
Well, Senator Manchin has, in fact, been public about talking. I think his number was $1.5 trillion. That's fine. That's a good negotiating start. Manchin has also said that he wants it paid for. I want it paid for. And you can pay for it with a $3.5 trillion bill by finally demanding that the wealthiest people in large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. As you well know, Chuck, there's a given year when Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, the wealthiest people in this country, don't pay a nickel in federal income taxes. Large corporations don't pay a nickel. We address that. You could pay for a $3.5 trillion. You could pay for a $6 trillion bill and pay for it completely.
Yeah. I understand that. But was this a number you knew? Because a lot of people are wondering, hey, why are we waiting till this week to start these negotiations when apparently some of these, we knew Senator Manchin's starting number in July. It just feels like a lot of time was wasted.
Well, no, that's not accurate. I mean, there has been serious negotiations going on literally for months now. And, you know, there's a frustration. that it has taken this long. I think I voted for the infrastructure bill. I think it's important that we rebuild our roads and our bridges and our water systems. That's very, very good. But it is absolutely imperative that we have a strong and comprehensive reconciliation bill which finally addresses the needs of working families. So, our job right now is to rally the American people to continue the negotiations. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to pass both pieces of legislation.
I want to talk about this issue of having them both linked together. I want you to react to what Senator Kyrsten Sinema said yesterday. Arizonans and all everyday Americans expect their lawmakers to consider legislation on the merits rather than obstruct new jobs and critical infrastructure investments for no substantive reason. What Americans have seen instead is an ineffective stunt to gain leverage over a separate proposal. She's referring to what happened in the House and the delay of that vote as a stunt. You were very supportive of the decision to hold off supporting that bill until everything was agreed upon. What do you say to Senator Sinema and to other moderates who don't like the linking of these two bills, that think it sort of sends a message of dysfunction to the rest of the country?
No, it's not a message of dysfunction, and I'm sure you remember. From the very beginning of this process, the President of the United States, Speaker Pelosi, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer made it clear. We're going down this road in a dual way. Both bills have got to be linked together because there is a strong feeling on the part of many of us that if you just pass the infrastructure bill, which is a good bill, I voted for it, then we will not get to the bill that working families really want, that finally demands that the wealthiest people in this country start paying their fair share of taxes. So what we said is, look, we all want the infrastructure bill. Great. But we also have got to do the reconciliation bill, which addresses the long neglected needs of working families and the elderly. Expanding Medicare to cover dental, hearing aids, and eyeglasses, doing child care, doing community colleges, enormously important for working families.
You made it clear that, and I think there is a path for you and Senator Manchin to find a path to meet somewhere, whether that's the middle, if somebody can define the middle, because you do agree on a philosophy on how to pay for this, on those taxes. Are you close with Senator Sinema, or do you feel like you're farther apart in getting her agreement on this?
Well, there are a lot of people who are negotiating with Senator Sinema. She has been in the White House, as I understand it, on numerous occasions. I think the people of Arizona are beginning to stand up and show some impatience there and saying, Senator, join the team here. Let's get something done on reconciliation. So I think, look, sometimes, Chuck, in all due respect, the media thinks this is the Red Sox playing the Yankees. It is not. This is a long and complicated process which is dealing with the most consequential piece of legislation probably since the New Deal and the Great Depression. It's a big deal. And it's not going to happen overnight. And the president is absolutely right. It doesn't matter whether it's next week or 3 weeks from now. What matters is that we finally address the problems facing working families. That's what matters.
Well, I was just going to say, deadlines are all artificial in your mind right now?
Of course they are. What matters is that we do it and we do it well. And when we do both of these pieces of legislation, I think the American people are going to say, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Democrats in the Congress. And by the way, where the hell were the Republicans in not having the guts to stand up to powerful special interests?
Senator Bernie Sanders, the chair of the Senate Budget Committee, the independent senator from Vermont who caucuses with the Democrats. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective.
Thank you very much.